Hello and welcome to EDH on a Budget. I'm your host, Iceman, and today we're going to be going over 4 underplayed enchantments. The stats I'm getting these from are EDH Rec and TCG Player. The first one we have is Cloud Form. For 1 blue, this enchantment costs 8 cents and is played in 0.09% of decks. That is about less than 1 in every 1,000 decks. This enchantment has, when Cloud Form enters the battlefield, it becomes an aura with enchant creature. Manifest the top card of your library and attach Cloud Form to it. For those of you who don't know, to manifest the card, you put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature. Turn it face up any time for its mana cost if it's a creature card. Enchanted creature has flying and hexproof. So there's a lot of support for manifest with this recent set at Markov Manor, and besides those cards helping manifest be better, it's hidden information, and as simple as they're not going to want to attack you because they don't know if their creature is big enough to get through if you have mana up, because you could always flip it face up and block with all of a sudden a bigger creature. This creature has flying and hexproof, so flying is going to enable you to get some damage in. You could block flyers, obviously, but the hexproof is so good that this should really see more play in decks that have top deck manipulation or decks that can see the top card of the library. This can be good for combat matter decks because flying's going to get in most decks. It's good for Enchantress, and I just think it should see some more play. Especially, you definitely want to avoid decks that have enter the battlefield abilities, because they will not trigger when the creature's already in play face down and you turn it face up. So definitely don't just go throwing it in every deck, because if you throw this in a enter the battlefield effect deck, it's not going to do much. You're going to be disappointed most of the time there. But other than that, it's going to be a nice solid card, especially because if you transform a big threat like an Eldrazi, they're going to be like, oh, I need to get rid of that. Oh wait, it has hexproof. And they're not going to have a chance to counter that card. They could only counter this card, so more than likely it's not going to be countered, and whatever you get is just going to be on the battlefield. Next, we have Naiad of Hidden Groves for 9 cents. This is in less than 1% of decks. It is an enchantment creature, and it has, as long as it's not your turn, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Stats are 2/3, and it's a nymph. So this is pretty good because you're gonna want to play at instant speed. A lot of removal. You're gonna want to have at instant speed, card draw, instant speed. This is just a mono blue card, so this can go in any deck with blue. But a lot of mono blue decks have instant speed, everything, removal, card draw. So you're going to want this in also counter heavy decks. Counter spells are instant speed, and by reducing the cost by 1, it's going to turn many of your counter spells into just 1 blue mana or 2 mana, and the difference between 1 and 2 is huge, but the difference between 2 and 3 is even bigger, because you're not going to be able to cast too many mana cost spells, but you are going to be able to cast a lot of 1-drop spells or 2-drops. Cantrips, there's a lot of cantrips in blue. By cantrip, I mean a card that you pay 1 or 2 mana at most, and it replaces itself with another card. So you'll be able to cycle through your deck very fast, and there's a lot of cards that care about drawing a card on every turn or just drawing cards in general. It's also good for flash decks. The thing is, you're definitely going to want decks that have generic mana and the mana cost. if most of your deck has no generic mana because it's just blue blue or anything like that, then this is not going to actually reduce the cost. So it shouldn't be too hard to build a deck like that, but it'd just be something to keep an eye out for. Next card is probably the most played of these at 2%. It's Cinder Vines. It's 17 cents. Cinder Vines is red and a green to cast. This enchantment has whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cinder Vines deals 1 damage to that player. It also has pay 1, sacrifice Cinder Vines, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Cinder Vines deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So there's a lot going on this card. There's the incremental burn damage. Most people are not going to stop playing non-creature spells just because they take 1 damage. So this, and they're not necessarily going to remove this card for just taking 1 damage. Most people just take the 1. And what that's going to lead to is games where this comes out, if it comes out early, it's just going to sit there and it's going to burn everybody slowly. And for only 2 mana, I mean, how much damage would you personally feel like is worth it? You know, for 2 mana, if each opponent lost 3 life, that would be alright, especially because there's more to the card than just the burn. It has the upward ability to do a lot more than 3 damage to each player. You know, it could do, you know, possibly 10 or more if you're playing somebody who's got a storm deck or many, there's a lot of non-creature decks out there. I mean, artifact decks, enchantment decks, and blue, not blue. There's a lot of instant sorcery decks, magecraft, and it's very easy to get incremental damage. You can improve that by adding damage doublers and triplers. When they start taking 2 or 3 damage per non-creature spell, that's going to add up a lot faster. But I think the second part of this card is equally good. Having the ability to pay just 1 mana to remove an artifact or enchantment is going to lead to games where players have enchantments and artifacts that they're going to want to cast because that's the deck they're in, but they are not going to cast it knowing that you have 1 mana up and you can just remove it right away. So they're not going to be playing their deck. So it's almost better than enchantment and artifact removal because if they never play it, you never have to pay the 1. They never get the benefit of playing it, and it's in a way as if you removed many artifacts and enchantments that way. As long as you leave the 1 mana up, they won't be able to remove this in response to anything because you'll just pay the 1 mana and remove an artifact or enchantment. There's almost guaranteed to be something out there. It could be a simple mana rock, which isn't, you know, great value when you think, oh, I paid 3 mana to get rid of a mana rock, but it did a lot more than that. So you should consider this in those decks I mentioned that have damage doublers, triplers, or decks that care about just dealing 1 damage. Also, be sure to leave that 1 mana up for the threat of activation. That way opponents don't get a chance to play their spells for artifacts and enchantments. I mean, they can still play it, but it won't last very long if it's too good. And the last card we have today is Penance. This card is 50 cents and it's in less than 0.1% of decks. Penance is 2 and a white. This enchantment is one of the most unique ones that I found for white. It says choose a card from your hand and put that card on top of your library. Prevent all damage from a black or red source. So most people will read this and be like, oh, that lose a card? I don't want to lose a card. This is terrible. And you gotta be more strategic thinking than that. So this is excellent in top deck manipulation. Decks that have miracle cards where you want it to be the first card you draw. Decks that can see the top card of your library and play said card, or can decks with Clash. There's a lot of opportunity to do stuff with the top deck of your library. Manifest, as we just discussed, that's another way to get value out of that card. But also, this enchantment is going to hose black and red decks strongly, especially if they have a strong of they don't even need to be a Voltron deck, but if they are, they're not going to get in for damage. They're not going to want to attack you just to be fogged. Since you draw a card every turn, you can fog them every rotation. They will not be able to take you out until they take this out from combat damage or commander damage. This doesn't even specify combat. So if somebody plays a spell that deals 20 damage or 13 damage or 5, even 5 damage, whatever, they're playing a board wipe in red that deals damage, this can prevent that damage. And yes, it will prevent all the damage, so everybody's board will survive, but it's a nice little extra added protection if you're the one that's winning and doesn't want to lose your board state. Red has some pretty good board wipes, but they're going to be damage, or almost all of Red's board wipes are damage based. So being able to neutralize red like that is nice. Black does have some, not a whole lot of damage spells for black, but and that's another thing. You do need to pay attention. It says prevent all damage from a black or red source. Loss of life, it does not count as damage as far as I know. It is when you lose life, yes, your life total goes down, but for this card to work, I believe it does need to say damage instead of loss of life. This is also an interesting way to discard your hand without discarding your hand, if that makes any sense. White has, everybody knows white is catch-up ramp. There's also catch-up card draw, and with some blue cards. White has some of that. You just want to take advantage of the discarding ability, even though it's not discard, because you can do that as many times as you want. I personally would like this with decks that have cards that let you play the lands from the top of your library, because then when you put the land that you want to play on top of your library and then you play that land, it didn't really set you back, especially if the top card wasn't another land. You can do this at instant speed, which is nice. Having a fog effect like this is going to deter blockers, or it's going to deter them from attacking. And you can use this even if they block. So say you're attacking and they're like, oh, I'll just block you with these creatures and kill your creature. You're like, nope, I'm going to put this card on the top of my library, and your creatures that are black and red are not going to deal any damage. Of course, you have to pick a red or black source, so this isn't going to be quite like a fog where you do it for their entire board, but you will be able to pick their biggest creature each time you do if you wanted to do this. So to summarize, it's great for top deck manipulation. It can prevent black-red big burn spells, win cons, and it can prevent combat damage, commander damage, and play it in decks that can do mint stuff at the top of your library. Or, this is another option, there are a lot of cards that can change colors of a permanent or a spell, or there are even some that can change the wording of the color on a card like this. So you could change this color to black or red to other colors with certain cards. And I know there's a mana dork for 3. I think it's Scuttlemutt that can change the color of a card on the battlefield. So that is an interesting combination because then this turns into not just black or red, but anything. If you got those, may not be the most strong deck if you're playing a ton of those, but it'd certainly be interesting and fun. You can do a lot with that most people have never seen, and that's pretty fun. All right, so if you have any comments, questions, or concerns about any of these cards, please comment, message me, let me know, and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to help us grow. Have a great day.